Thanks everyone for joining this panel discussion today, where we'll be sharing knowledge around blockchain and what it means to the nonprofit sector. My name's Matt. I'm the co-founder of Task. We provide a technology platform running on blockchain that helps social enterprises to gather data, report on the impact being created, and leverage new ways to raise funding. Before we jump into the discussion, let me first just do a quick round the table and introduce the panel. Steve Walker, my business partner, he's the founder and CEO at Task. He's operated successfully in the startup space since 2003, building and exiting a number of tech businesses. Why Task? Well, Steve's mission is to leverage technology in ways that create better outcomes in people's lives. Next, got Navroop Sahdev, who is the founder and CEO of the Digital Economist, a global impact organization with a mission to drive technological convergence towards a human-centered digital economy. In 2009, Navroop co-authored Blockchain Economics, Implications of Distributed Ledgers, Markets, Communications Networks, and Algorithmic Reality, the first book on the economics of blockchain. And we've also got Sam Connor, known on Twitter as the Luminaut. Sam is a Stellar champion who's helping to educate people on the work Stellar do, particularly how their tech is a benefit to people previously excluded from the global financial landscape. Sam is also the founder of StellarGlobal, a space that reflects the multicultural, multinational and multi-ethnic nature of the Stellar ecosystem. We've got a few topics to cover in the next kind of 20, 30 minutes, and I'm going to jump straight in and really talk about, first of all, the crypto donation space for nonprofits. And it's been growing over the last few years, particularly this year, when more and more nonprofits are accepting cryptocurrency donations. Steve, maybe we go to you first. Should all nonprofits now be accepting cryptocurrency as a form of donation?
Cheers, Matt. Well, it's a great question. I think the fast answer is, why would you not want to open up new revenue streams to your charity? To not be accepting forms of cryptocurrency just doesn't make sense. It's not there to remove existing donor bases. It's there to complement. And if you look now at the wealth that's been generated over the past decade in the crypto community, you've got a lot of typically younger generation people who have accrued a lot of wealth, and they're looking for great places to put it. You've also got an industry that's building credibility at the moment, and different ways that it can do that. One way is to be able to contribute positively through charitable donations. So, the acceptance of cryptocurrency is going to be growing over the next 5-10 years. El Salvador may not be a large country, but it's the first country that's accepted Bitcoin as legal tender. This is only going to accelerate over the coming years. So I think, in short, any charity looking at this needs to be thinking about opening up that new revenue stream and adding those new donors to your existing donor base.
Cheers, Steve. Yeah, Navroop, it'd be great. Anything you have to add on this topic, it'd be great to hear your feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Matt, and everybody else here. Really excited for this panel, and agree wholeheartedly with what Steve said. 2 points, right? A, why wouldn't you tap into the new wealth? You're spot on there, Steve, and also, when it's an industry building credibility, there are ways to do that sooner than later. And that's particularly applicable to the blockchain space. Now, a couple of things that I would love to add here, Matt. First thing, the wealth creation and, the liquidity aspect is something we can double click, right? Where that wealth is being generated, by who, and where it's going, right? From a more traditional macroeconomy perspective, we're looking at there is excess liquidity right now, and those assets need to go somewhere, right? And so it's not a coincidence with the governments getting out, support to their citizens because of COVID, because of job losses. We saw sort of a boom in the crypto space as well, and it's again one thing leading to the other. And we're seeing growth here, kind of unprecedented growth in the space, and then combined with monetary expansion, as it's called, from a more macroeconomic perspective, And so, you have a space that's fast growing, that's desperately looking for credible projects and want to, put money there. And so again, if you're on a receiving end, if you're a charity, then there are a few things to grasp here. First of all is the pace and where the innovation is in the crypto space. Second is on education, understanding enough to be able to add a business, whether if it's just a payment capability or any other business function to it. And I think the final thing is just, I guess, the savviness around as well from a more demographic perspective to what Steve, you alluded to, which is there's a younger demographic that's looking for impact. So I'll pause here. A lot more to discuss, but I'll give it back to you here, Matt.
Yeah, cool. Some really good points there. And, we'll get to some of that. I think we'll be able to kind of broaden on that in the next topic as well. Before we do, Sam, great to get your kind of reflection on this topic and, non-profits taking crypto as donations and the importance.
Yes, thank you again for this opportunity. It's been great. I'm really excited to be here. I think, there's been so many great comments already. One thing that I could add is just the global reach. I know in the Stellar community, during the pandemic, we had an organization that's using the Stellar network called Lumenthropy. And it was a great effort where the entire globe came together during this pandemic, and we identified several different nonprofits across the globe. And we were able to work with the Stellar Development Foundation that matched up to 2.5 million XLM to every dollar that came in. And so, when you think about the global reach, you have a company that's based here in the United States. And I mean, we were able to reach people in France, Africa, Latin America. It was just a great example of how easily, and all we had to do was tell them to set up a simple address, and that's all they had to do. Nothing complicated. We had the off-ramps that they were able to do, and we changed lives. And so the global impact is, that's to me, another huge reason that any charity should consider accepting crypto.
Cool. Cheers, Sam. And yeah, good segue, I think, into the next point, which is we have crypto and, everyone knows Bitcoin and then there's many other cryptocurrencies, but really this underlying technology of blockchain, which there are a host of different benefits within, the nonprofit sector and what, that can add really value to the way a nonprofit offers. Maybe to you, Navroop, first, just to talk around blockchain as a technology and, how it can assist the sector, how it can be useful to individual nonprofits as a piece of technology.
Yeah, and I actually just want to reference here, Matt, that we actually recorded a podcast on this. So I think anyone who is interested in a deeper dive, I'll invite them to listen on that on the cast
we
website.
Did, thank you. Cheers to reference that. Yeah, good point.
Right. And just to, I guess, summarize some of the things that emerged from that conversation and sort of piggyback on that, is, as an economist, I talk about value a lot, right? How is value created? How is value perceived? How is it measured? And I think with a lot of the innovation in the digital asset space, we're looking at not just new value being created, but also the perception of value that is shifting, right? There is no such thing as intrinsic value. In fact, humans ascribe value to things. So that's the first thing to remember, right, from a nonprofit space. Well, I should say generally, but then again, from a nonprofit space sector and perspective, I think the critical thing here is that value landscape is continuing to shift, and that acceleration is, just continuous, right? And so we're moving further, forward, but in a much faster pace, and sort of the innovations in the space allude to that. Now, what do I mean by that? And just to kind of double click on this a little bit, where you see traditional economic value is starting to shift, right? It's not just investment. It's not just about, climate funds. It is also, again, where the growth in the sector is going to be. I understand the pain of the nonprofit sector. Traditionally, there's a corporate piece and, it's under corporate social responsibility or some other, greenwashing or whitewashing, whatever those terms are. And that piece usually goes to nonprofits. And you have to have the paperwork. You need to, make sure your organization is compliant in all those ways. And the US has a whole set of really burdensome things. And don't even get me started on India and other economies from a nonprofit perspective. And what I've seen, my colleagues who've been running nonprofits over the past 20 years, 30 years, it's the same pie they're fighting for from all these years, right? And it's the same handful of foundations or corporates, or they're looking to tap into. And I've definitely had moments I was like, wow, I mean, we're so aggressively fighting for what exists. How about we create new wealth? And here's the opportunity. So let me pause here, give it back to you, Matt.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Navroop. Some good points there. And Sam, love to jump to you on this with your kind of perspective on Stellar, which is one of the cryptos, one of the blockchains out there, which has particular uses in certain areas. But yeah, I'd love to get your reflection on on blockchain as a technology within the nonprofit sector, the value it can bring.
Well, I'm very excited and bullish, for lack of a better word, with blockchain technology entering this field. I myself, I founded a nonprofit. Myself back when I was coming out of college. I've also chaired a nonprofit myself, and so there's a lot of pain points that I can speak on. Just practical things. Number one, how do you deal with funds? Typically with nonprofits, you have to be able to ensure that, hey, if a check is being written, that there's somebody, a second signer, let's say. Well, with Stellar, for instance, you have a built-in multi-sig system. So imagine every single time there's money going out, everybody is getting pinged. There's a wallet called the Lobster wallet on the Stellar blockchain that you can set up a vault, and essentially you can have your nonprofit funds allocated. And as soon as somebody wants to go out and, let's say, buy some office supplies or spend some money on children clothes, everybody gets pinged, and you can say, you know what, if 3 out of 5 sign on this, then it's approved. So that's one way. Another, and I think the most important thing, one of the issues that I found often trying to raise capital for nonprofits, especially when you want to get big dollars, is how do I know that my money's being used, right? Well, here you go right there, where with blockchain and technology, you're able to create avenues. I'm sure Taz could speak about this, of being able to track the flow of your investments, the flow of activities. So that way now you have a trackable system that you can send back to your donors and also promote to new donors to say, hey, look, we're standing out above the rest. And I think that that's a huge way that opens up, investment and credibility. And another one, which I think I'll pause for later on, which is NFTs, which I think will open up a whole nother opportunity, but I'll pause there. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Sam. It's a good point. And we will definitely get to NFTs next, I think, or we may just merge into it because it's a really exciting area that we want to talk about. I know Steve does. Before we do that, Steve, perhaps you've got some stuff to add, particularly around the work we're doing, obviously at Task, and we've got some at the end of this panel discussion. We will show a bit of a video around a use case which is really relevant to this conversation. But yeah, if you want to add some stuff around uses of blockchain for nonprofits, be great.
Well, just bringing those comments or listening to the comments, which I agree with. There's, for the charity that's looking at the ways to adapt and adopt blockchain technology, you have new ways, you've got new paradigms where finances can move direct from a donor through to the beneficiary. At the same time, the structure of blockchain means that as an organization, you can bake in automation in terms of the incentive systems and the behaviors that you're trying to reward. That means you can start to decentralize, you can reduce the stress on management, and you can scale out. When you look at a lot of these separate projects and you say, well, why are all these different crypto projects existing in the world? Often the answer is that within that project, they're trying to incentivize particular behaviors. And for charities that are looking to scale, this is one of the major benefits. If you really want to dig in to how you can create a huge change, that's what blockchain brings to you. And it's done in a way where you combine a new economic system that has a right rewards baked in with the transparency that Sam was talking about. And we're obviously working on the Biochar Trust, which is a customer at Task, and that's using Stellar to create a carbon offset token. And this carbon offset token, as opposed to an organization coming to the market and saying, hey, we've minted $1 million of tokens and they're available for sale. The only way that these tokens are created is when the Biochar Trust are tracking and tracking this data inside the Stellar blockchain ledger of the activities around carbon sequestration and the use of biochar as fertilizer being used in the ground. When they do that, these tokens are created and they can be purchased as an offset by organizations. It's all transparent, it's all baked in. Everyone can scrutinize the data. There's no way there's any kind of greenwashing. It's impossible. It's a hermetically sealed system that Biochar Trust can use to scale out globally. And it automates trust and it automates reward systems in there, which ultimately are channeling more wealth through to the farmers who look to make the switch away from crop burning and into sustainable agricultural practices.
Cool. Cheers, Steve. Cheers, everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think transparency, trust, and ultimately those two things lead to, greater scale and also, additional access to funds ultimately, which is, I know a lot of, nonprofits are always
Matt,
focused on where the next, yeah, go for it.
I'll just add in here, excellent points there, Sam and Steve. I agree wholeheartedly. I think you've taught more economics here than I have, so cheers for that. And I just wanted to jump in here and say, I think it's also time for nonprofits as well to transform themselves and the way they do the work, right? And it's not just about where's the money, right? And where's the money coming from, or how can we have the right incentives in place and cater to, the requests or the demands of the donor countries. I started my career working in the UN Environment Program, so I'm very well familiar with the fact that just like a large part of the organization work just caters to that, right? Rather than actually doing impactful work. And of course, funding in itself is a more than full-time job in of itself. But these new models to create impact, the Steve, you gave an excellent example of, and then Sam, of course, the Stellar ecosystem continues to do and support. And I would just kind of go in and encourage the fact that we need to have diverse voices in bringing those new models to fruition, to real life, and that's the other piece, right? And then I guess as we kind of talk about NFTs as well. In fact, the Digital Economist is the largest firm focused on building tokenomics models and architectures. And this is the thing that we kind of keep running into over and over again. There's a handful of usual suspects. And then from an enterprise perspective, they're just not ready for the kind of disruption that technology promises. Kind of answering your original question there, Matt, around blockchain. So, where this is getting to is the innovation cannot come from the incumbents. And that writing's kind of on the wall. Even if the messaging is there, even if the tinkering with the tech is there could be a venture arm and that sort of thing as well. But really, it's the new players, it's the new age, it's the new wealth. And I think from a charity and nonprofit more broadly sector perspective, it would be good if it's not just a way to get money in, but also create impact in new ways.
How much, Navroop, how much do you think that existing charities can evolve their current systems, or they need to think in terms of reinvention? How do you position it like that when you're looking at implementation of the economics of impact?
I mean, I think, again, it's going to come down to what the appetite is. There's some sectors that are farther ahead and others are not so much. Interestingly enough, we see a lot of innovation coming from the so-called developing part of the world, where, you know, the idea of frugal innovation, of, you know, pushing beyond the regular channels and relationships is, in fact, you know, driving innovation. You could call it the leapfrogging as it's traditionally used. Personally, for me, if I were to give an opinion on this, I think it's high time from a more nonprofit sector on how you create impact to rethink that. You know, it's one of the things that Alex Pentler at MIT says, which is going around with the bowl is not a good business model.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool, some good points. We got about 4 minutes left. I want to touch on NFTs. Maybe, you know, whoever wants to chip in, but actually maybe, I don't know, Sam, do you want to give a very simple 20-second, 30-second NFT explanation? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I know looking at the audience and, you know, if I Google NFT, do you want to just give the kind of 10,000 foot view of what an NFT is? And then we'll talk a little bit around where the potential use cases are in the sector.
Well, I mean, the NFT is a non-fungible token, right? By definition. And so what does that mean? It's you know, people are familiar with cryptocurrencies. With an NFT, what you can create is a representation of a unique item that is forever immutable on the blockchain. And where we've seen it really explode is right now with digital art. And we've seen that even tomorrow. Actually, I'm doing an interview with about four different artists on our StellarGlobal podcast, highlighting how they're able to you know, reach the global atmosphere. And so kind of going to your question about I guess the impact that it can use in nonprofits. One of the first nonprofits that I did, one of the things that we would do was every year we adopted an existing nonprofit, and throughout the year we raised money. Well, for the end of year event, we had a local artist that created a custom piece that was auctioned off, especially and the benefits went to that nonprofit. Well, you know, in that instance, it was, you know, people had to consider the size of the art piece. You were limited in scope of who can get it. But I feel as if with, you know, if that was an NFT that we could open up to the entire globe, it could have, you know, it just attracted so much more attention and outreach. And so I know we only have a couple of minutes, so I want to give opportunity for everyone to speak on. But yeah, NFTs are definitely an exciting and flexible tool for nonprofits to use as they raise funds and awareness.
Cool. Cheers. Steve, Navroop, anything to add, you know, around NFTs?
I'll jump in here. I guess the economist in me wants to first comment that, you know, we're looking at the lockdowns because of COVID and the fact that the gig economy was stifled right off the bat, right? And continue to be for the next year and a half, almost splitting into 2 years now. And so this revolution in this space was long overdue. The other is platform economics, where platforms like Facebook and Spotify, and somebody was telling me the story about OnlyFans, sorry. They, you know, there was a controversy there as well. Sorry about that, I didn't know the name there. And so, you know, here are creators who are, you know, driving these platforms. That's why they get billions of dollars of valuations and revenue, but they don't have a share in it, right? So, and that's really why I think it's a major revamping needs to happen. Well, particularly for the NFT space, you know, it's, you know, empowering the gig economy, but then B, also, I think it's the future being digital is a clear message from the space, right? Going beyond the physical to what Sam, you said, because in the digital world, there's a lot more abundance compared to physical scarcity. So I'll give it back to you, Steve. The last 30 seconds are yours.
Well, I mean, there's so many NFTs. There are so many opportunities. I mean, just taking yours and Sam's comments, because you can use smart contracts with NFTs, which automate so many systems, you can have an artist that will create art for the charity and agree to split a percentage with the charity on a sale. But additionally, could say that in event of future sales, there is always funds being sent through to the charity. To the end of time, there will be, any time that NFT is traded, that art's traded, there's revenues that are going through to the non-profit, the charity. And that, I think that's really interesting. You've got two other quick models is, the collectibles that you can do limited editions, you can have campaigns, it brings people together, they're able to collect something which could be as simple as a digital sticker. As they do that, it's generating funds through to the, from a new donor community. But the one I'll end on is around natural assets. And if you're protecting natural assets, huge opportunities here. Quick example, we take 1,000 square kilometers of rainforest and we'll create 1,000 NFTs to represent that 1,000 square kilometers. And as we mint the NFTs, within there, we're going to put the land registry rights for that square kilometer of each of those NFTs. We can now sell those. We can do interesting things with smart contracts where we can say, let's take satellite imagery of that 1,000 square kilometers, and the price will be pegged on the green density and the forest density of that region. And now we have a community of 1,000 people who own that land and are able to trade that land with the price being fixed depending on the environmental success of reforestation in that region. And that's one example of millions that you can go into. Whereas if you're trying to bring people together, allow them to collect physical assets and protect resources, there's huge models with the NFT world. So you can go from cute stickers through to protecting natural assets on very large scale, and the NFT world is going to be big in the coming decade.
Cool. Cheers, Steve. Cheers, Navroop. Cheers, Sam. I know we've tried to pack in an awful lot for the audience in a really short time, but also anyone can reach out to myself, Steve, to Navroop, Sam. We will share details and we can dig much deeper into any of these topics. We're going to transition to a short video just to give you something to view outside of our voices, which shows kind of how this all comes together as technology, blockchain, and how it can help the space. So, yep, appreciate everyone listening, and thanks everyone for taking part today. One of the biggest challenges we are seeing today is how to reduce the amount of CO2 that is pumped into the atmosphere every year. A big contributor to this comes from farming communities in the developing world, who burn crop waste to speed up the farming process. Fixing this problem requires the right tools, training, and incentives. At Task, we're working with Biochar Trust, a social enterprise that is helping remove thousands of tons of CO2 from the atmosphere by teaching smallholder farmers to create biochar instead of burning their crop waste. Using Task and Stellar, the whole process is tracked on blockchain and tokens are generated to represent CO2 sequestered. Organizations can invest in the program and offset their carbon footprint, a process that generates much needed income for smallholder farmers, whilst also helping to reduce CO2 emissions. Biochar Trust uses a common asset issued on the Stellar blockchain called Stop the Smoke, or STS for short. New tokens are created, or minted as it's known, when carbon is sequestered. One STS token equals 1 ton of CO2 removed from the air. By doing this, Biochar Trust has a transparent ledger of everything they do, and it's these tokens that can be purchased by companies looking to offset their carbon. When the STS tokens are purchased, liquidity is generated for Biochar Trust, which can be shared with these farming communities. So how does Biochar Trust pull in the remote data in order to prove all of this? Well, I'm now on the Task app and inside the Biochar Trust program. I'm demonstrating the role of a farmer or volunteer worker who will add the information required to verify the process. The most important activity is tracking the use of biochar, as it gives us the information needed to calculate CO2 sequestered. You can see here how the farmers provide the data that Biochar Trust needs to calculate that CO2 sequestered. All these activities are displayed publicly for funders to view. And if we click through one of these activities, we can dig into the data and media, including geolocations, that grow confidence and trust with investors. As the biochar is used as animal feed or fertilizer, a formula calculates the CO2 sequestered and then mints the new amount of STS tokens against this positive environmental impact. It's all tracked within Stellar blockchain. You can see a unique task URL that has been added to the memo field of this transaction. And if we load it up, you can see it takes us to the data that was used to justify the minting of the new STS tokens. Okay, so we've now looked at how the data is captured and the tokens are minted. Let's also understand the buyer journey. In this case, an organization or individual offsetting their carbon footprint through the purchase of STS tokens. The wallet in Task gives us everything we need to trade and exchange Stellar assets, including STS. I can buy lumens to fund my account using on-ramp partners. I can then use the exchange feature to swap assets. In the example here, I'm exchanging $10 for the equivalent in STS tokens. We can view the Stellar Explorer to see the details of our purchase and the payment path. As an investor, I'm highly confident I'm only buying verified sequestered carbon assets and can display them publicly using my Task profile or other Stellar wallet. So that's how the system works. This Stellar-powered Task solution is allowing Biochar Trust to scale in a fast and effective manner. The project is now live in Thailand and Africa and rapidly scaling to other geographies. It's allowing verification of the process and ensuring funds are delivered across borders to farmers in a cost-effective way. Over the coming months and years, the program is expected to scale to thousands more farmers globally, helping to reduce CO2 emissions whilst improving livelihoods within these farming communities. Thanks a lot.